Hey, Kevin, great to be working with you again. A lot of good stuff to work on here. Funny enough, I know that you mentioned that she didn't feel quite as comfortable with this formation here at Button Willow. It's the one that I know kind of the most, actually. Actually, I think you're driving this better than what you're driving Laguna Seca. There's a lot of good stuff here. I think you're better on throttle here in a lot of areas, and that was really kind of what we were most focused on at Laguna Seca. Ultimately, I think we just need to kind of calm things down a bit, find the smoothness, and make our lives a little bit easier. But there's really nothing drastically, fundamentally wrong with what you're doing here. It's gonna be little things here and there that'll definitely add up to some time. So let's go ahead and start playing it here. Turn one looks awesome to me. Good braking application here. I would say the one thing I would like to see is a tiny bit later of a turning point and or slowing our hands down. Notice how you're apexing the start of this curb right here. I would like to apex about a half car length later than that. And I think this early apex, this early turning point is what's causing you to run out of road on corner exit here. You're really fighting the car on corner exit. I would like to see you fight the car a little bit less, and I'd like to see you get back to full throttle a little bit earlier. This time, your throttle application's actually really damn solid for the most part, but notice how you can't unwind the steering wheel? That's a sign of an early turn-in point or an early apex point. So let's work on probably about a half car length to a car length later. There's really not a great reference point here for the most part. Uh, you can kind of, I don't even know if you're going to be able to really tell here, but it almost looks like the rubber line's a little bit shinier here. And notice how it's just a little bit later. And I think that's the line I would like you to follow through here so that you can unwind the steering wheel a little bit more on corner exit. So where you apex here, I'd like to apex here. That's going to allow me to, bam, just a little bit less steering input. And that should be allowing me to get back to full throttle for the most part. Turning to turn two, I'd like to see you turn a little bit later, a little bit more aggressively, so we could be straight line braking a little bit more. My turning point's typically closer to the end of this guard tower. I think we're turning a little bit earlier, and because of that, we have to turn more in here than I'd like to see you. I want to be a little bit later so that I could be a little bit more parallel. I want to come in and be a little bit more like this. I probably exaggerated that too much, but a little bit later will allow you to be a little bit more straight line braking so that you can be a little bit later on the brakes and carry that brake more into this corner. I'd like to see you continue to trail brake it and get a little bit more rotation in here. Your throttle place is not bad here, but if we could just be a little bit more rotated, just a little bit more, like another car length or so later, you might be able to just start to unwind the steering wheel, and that might allow you to get back to full throttle earlier. I don't want to be back to full throttle about here. We're only back to full throttle out over here. So it means we're losing a little speed down to turn three. Being specific with what we do in our inputs are important. Sorry, I just noticed one thing as well. Back this up a little bit. No, okay, never mind. We look pretty solid through here. This turn three section, actually, I'm happy with it. And this is where I find most drivers going wrong. Love a nice deep trail brake past this. Pretty good throttle application here. This is a corner where I'm probably trail braking till the end of that curb or till I'm past that curb and then braking. So you might want to try a little bit longer of a trail brake. This is a corner where I'm not holding it all the way to the right. Because we're sacrificing a little bit, I will want to trail brake longer. Anytime that I want to sacrifice, I want more rotation, I'm going to probably extend my trail brake. So try to be, you'll probably be able to roll in more entry speed while still holding it to the right. If you could trail brake a little bit deeper into the corner, I want to squirt a full throttle in here. Bam, full throttle off of it. Bam, good throttle through here. The next thing is, where I'm really focused on is how can I spend as much time around the lap as at full throttle, sorry. So what I would like to see you try through here, and this is, maybe this is where I'm playing around as a driver. So this is a coaching point where I'm like, this is what I think I would do. I might adjust back to what you're doing, but what I'd like to see you try to do is drive at full throttle and then get off the throttle, so that I can be back to full throttle again here. I would rather probably be a little bit slower through the middle of this corner because I won't have that throttle, but be back to full throttle now versus back to full throttle here. Try that. Try as you turn in, coast, and then get back to full throttle earlier and see what works better for you. If you go against that, that's fine. But this whole section, I would probably spend less time on throttle than you, but I'm going to spend more time on full throttle because I'd have the same note in here. Rather than trying to carry 40, 50% throttle to the middle of this corner, maybe I'll try to carry 20% throttle. Maybe I'll get off the throttle and then get back to full throttle right in here. That matters more to me. Obviously, this lap we made a small mistake. We just had a little bit too much entry speed, right? No harm, no foul at the end of the day. But I'd rather have you thinking about getting back to full throttle a little bit earlier than trying to carry maintenance throttle through the middle of the corner. I think that's going to make your life easier. I think it's going to be faster as well. Through the bus stop, we look pretty solid. Too early to throttle at the end of the bus stop, though. I'm going to be really specific with that because that's what we're really focused on. Bam. See how you're back to throttle here? I want to bring in more entry speed into the bus stop, and I always feel like I'm too late to throttle the bus stop. I back to throttle now. So I'd rather see you focus on maybe a little bit later of a brake zone, but really lighter on the brakes through here, rolling more speed. That'll allow you to get back to that full throttle or roll more apex speed while still getting back to full throttle at the same point. So in Riverside, I like your line. Obviously, I don't know what the brake pressure situation is here. My gut's telling me that we're trying to drive it in too hard and we're braking too hard. So we have too much weight transfer, and that's why the rear end steps out, and that's why we can't roll in more entry speed. So I'm looking for, everything looks good right here, but I'm looking at our speed reduction, and it happens more aggressively than I would expect to see. And I notice as it happens, we have a little moment here. We have just a little moment. So what I'm thinking is, can we get away to start off with a little bit earlier of a brake, but a lighter brake, so we don't send as much weight to the front, so that we have a better balance, so that you can really roll the speed in and be a little bit more patient to throttle here. Eventually, maybe you can brake at the same point, but just be lighter on the brakes. That's what I'd like to see you try through here. I don't see anything that we're doing drastically wrong. My question to you would be, I know you mentioned other aero cars running 103 miles an hour through here. Is it the same car? Is it the same tires? Is it the same weight? There's so many variables. Is it the same day at the same time of the day? I am always very hesitant to look at mile an hour of other cars unless everything is the same. And even if it's, I would almost want to say that driver in my car to really notice the difference. You can get really caught out by looking at others. I think you're looking pretty good through here, but I do think with that little bit more gentle of a weight transfer application, yes, you could probably roll a little bit more speed through here. Just be a little hesitant looking at others. I obviously don't know if everything was the same. If it was, okay, but if there's any differences at all, you can get in trouble there. Through here, pretty solid job. Up over Phil Hill, early to throttle. Too early. I want to roll in. That's my initial throttle application spot as I crest over the hill, back to full throttle. So let's work on that entry speed into Phil Hill. The one thing I noticed, especially here in the sweeper, and it's hard to tell other places, are we getting a good heel toe in? In the sweeper here, that second downshift, we don't. And I love that you're separating out your downshifts here. Every corner, I don't want you skipping gears. It sounded like in Sunset that we skipped gears. I like to always have one downshift at a time, one gear at a time. Way more consistent, and you can roll in more speed. So I love that you're doing that here. But I noticed the second downshift, bam, we locked those rear tires. I went back and listened, and I don't really hear good blips, but that may not be an issue. If this is a one-off, don't worry about it. If you feel like you are struggling with heel toe, let me know. We have an article on our website about good heel toe. If you just type in heel toe, it'll come up. Something that I struggled with, the way I teach is really focusing on the knee. This is a really hard corner to get it right on, but it's something that's really important. For really working on rolling in more entry speed, it's impossible to do that without a good heel toe. So just wanted to bring that up. Hard to tell a little bit here, but if you do struggle with it, focus on it because you're not going to be able to roll in more entry speed until we have a good heel toe. I actually like what you're doing for the most part in the sweeper. It's a really freaking tough corner. I feel like if we had a better heel toe, you could be more speed through the middle of the corner, and you could have been a little bit more patient to throttle. but this is pretty solid. Ultimately, it's about getting back to full throttle earlier. So what I'd like to see is if you need to get back to throttle in the middle of the corner here, I'd like to see you be a little bit more aggressive to throttle so that we can release off the throttle right now to get the rotation I need so that I can get back to full throttle here. Focus on trying to manipulate the weight transfer of the car so that you can get back to full throttle here. So if you need to be a little more aggressive in the throttle, come off of it to get the weight transfer and come back. It's smooth. I don't want you like full throttle off and then full throttle. It's a little bit more aggressive, slow release, get that little bit of weight transfer, let the car flow, let the car rotate, and then back to it here. So we're full throttle earlier through this whole section. Last corner is solid except for our throttle application. This is probably the most important corner to be patient to throttle, so we're back to full throttle earlier. Love what you're doing on the brake zone here. Great turning point. Look how you're getting the throttle back in here already. I'm waiting for that compression. I'm waiting. As I get into this compression, initial throttle, and I want to be back to full throttle by about here. This small release off the throttle doesn't look like much here. Where you come up, let's say you're 70%, we drop down to 50%, and then we get back to it. That could be 0.2 of a second like that. Those little things add up to way more time than you'd ever imagine. So be really specific with that. Obviously, we talked much more in depth about that in Laguna Seca video. We're better here, but we need to be, I'm just going to keep hitting this, so we can really build that habit. So no matter where we go, we've got our foundation, our fundamental good to go. As always, I hope that helped. Really excited to have you on the team and looking forward to the next one.